I'm here.
Dunk. I'm your host, Andrew Schleck. We're part of the Athletic Podcast Network. With me, as always, on Wednesdays is my good friend Alex Spears. Alex, what's up?
What's up, Andrew?
What's up?
How's it going?
Man, I'm a little under the weather. I'm also over this weather, the cold weather.
It's cold there with no precipitation. Is that right?
It's so
No
cold.
snow?
We got snow. We got snow
Oh,
on Sunday. Yeah, but
well, that makes it worth it.
yeah,
how much you got?
Not when it's this cold. Not enough for it to be even cool though. Like you can't go sledding or anything. It's just like
okay.
Yeah.
We got a half inch of ice in Portland last night, and so you can't go anywhere. So slick out there.
So slick.
So slick.
Something else that was slick was the Thunder slipping on their bums there in LA against the Clippers.
Yeah. I mean, in comparison, much more miffed and peeved about the Lakers game.
Yeah, totally.
For some reasons, they're just like out of their control. This is just the way things go against the Lakers. They're kind of like the Kings, in that you know that when they play each other, you're either getting a really bad game from OKC or you're getting like an abnormally good game from the Lakers.
Yeah,
and it just never feels like we can just match them up how they actually are, which is not a good team. For whatever reason, we always get like the best version of the Lakers when we play them, and it's very annoying. I mean, they were starting to turn it around a little bit because I think they've won 3 of 5 now, but they had been a really bad team for several weeks.
Oh yeah,
and
they've been one of the worst teams in the league for a while,
and it's super annoying. And in that game, what bothered me was I did think they settled way too much for threes. Which check this out: they took 49 threes in the game against the Lakers.
Mm-hmm.
How many times in Thunder history have they taken 49 or more threes in a game?
God, it's got to be like less than 5. Like it just can't be that many.
It's 3. Yeah. And one of the other games was also against the Lakers, which I forgot this game. This was January 17th, 2019. A 138-128 overtime loss to the Lakers, which I guess that makes a little more sense because it's overtime. But yeah, they took 49 threes. Oh, actually, yes, 49 threes. They obviously didn't shoot well on them. They were 31%. But just that number of threes. And what was crazier is I went on to NBA.com. They claim that 34 of those 49 were wide open. And they shot 29% on those.
I mean, that's how it felt. It just felt like, oh my gosh, they're just not knocking these threes down. And it did feel a little rushed at times. They would get down the court, make one pass, the three's open, take the 3. You know, it kind of felt like that, like rinse and repeat, where even Mark talked about it after the game, how they could have had more cutting, more movement, you know, kind of reverse the ball a little bit. They didn't do any of that, you know.
Yeah, and you can give credit to the Lakers because I know they went to zone and that once again flummoxed the Thunder about for periods of that game. But yeah, that was just an annoying game. On the flip side, like the Clippers game was just really entertaining. Like I didn't really come out of that feeling that bad. That was like an incredible performance by Paul George.
Yeah,
the level of shot making on that team. Now, I'm sure if I went back, I would find plays where like they do the thing where they're packing the paint and they didn't get out to the shooter enough. But a lot of those shots were just like these superstar shots that PG, Kawhi, and James Harden have been known for. You know, like Harden hitting his step back threes, PG rising up in the mid range. Same with Kawhi. Kawhi looking much more spry than I remember him like last year.
Yeah.
That play where he and I actually thought this was a key point of the game, the beginning of the second half, where they come out and one of the plays is Chet gets matched up on Kawhi, and Kawhi's like in the corner, and he just blows by Chet and dunks, and it was very impressive in the moment. And Mark actually pulled the starting lineup after only 3 minutes at that start. Like by the 9-minute mark, he had already made his subs, which I thought was interesting. It was not a good night for the starters. They were not good against the Lakers. They were a -8 net rating. They were a minus like 23.5 net rating against the Clippers. It just didn't work.
Shea was a team low -19. And Shea just didn't look like himself in either of these games, which is part of that. You know, like the like crazy shot making wasn't there from Shea. He had some nice moments, but 6 of 16 for 19 points is like not a typical Shea night. 0 steals. I mean, there's a lot of like indicators that he just isn't 100%. And that's the league. Like you got to play sometimes when you're not 100%, and he did in both these games. And you can question whether he should or shouldn't have played. We don't have all the information in front of us to say whether he should or shouldn't have, but he wasn't.
I think he wasn't 100%, but in both cases, like he was good enough where they could have won either of those games.
Yeah, totally.
They really could have.
Yeah.
I think if you get
last night, to be honest, like Chet just wasn't very good.
I was just about to say that. Yeah. I was like, if you just get a normal game from Chet, especially shooting wise, I think like that would have been a game there at the end. I looked it up. Over his last 5 games, he's shooting like 21% from 3. So he's in a little bit of a slump, a little mini slump. Hopefully he breaks out of that.
Mm-hmm.
And you always have to remind yourself, like, he's a rookie. This is his first time playing 82 games. This is the most compacted part of the schedule. So, like, if we start seeing a little bit of drop off from him or Kaysen, which I think we've seen a little drop off there as well, it's kind of to be expected. Like, you should anticipate that happening at some point. We can't expect him to play like a top 20 player, which he was playing like that level for a really long time, to continue throughout the whole season of his rookie year. So if he has a little drop off here, you just hope that as we get close to the playoffs, we start seeing the return. Because even like defensively, it just didn't feel like Chet was as impactful as he has been over these last couple games.
With that said, like, guy who was super impactful was J-Dub. He was incredible last night.
Great in both games.
25, 3, and 7. He did have 4 turnovers, but it's like kind of whatever.
Who cares?
10 of 14, 2 of 3 from 3. He's like hyper efficient. He is like a genuine 3-level scorer that I think is. I mean, he's a star. Like, he's a star, and he's going to be like a mega star. And you just hope that OKC can just keep Shea, J-Dub, and Chet, because like those guys are like 3 like stars in this league, and I just don't think there's any question about it after watching him, through 40 games of this season.
Yeah, and as much as Mark does like to tinker with lineups, I am hoping that he feels like he's found something with that 3-man lineup of Dub, Chet, and Micic. Like, I love those 3 guys playing together at the beginning of the second and the fourth. And who those other 2 guys are going to be in that lineup, I think you can make a case for a couple guys. I think Wiggins got some minutes last night that I really liked.
Yeah.
But we've seen Kaysen paired with them. We've seen a couple other guys paired with those 3.
Yeah.
I just really like that has really changed the season. Even as they're going, they lost 2 in a row, so it's not like they're flying high or anything. But the difference those lineups make. I mean, those lineups are the reason why last night isn't a blowout. Like, those lineups are the reason why last night you actually all of a sudden are in the middle of the fourth quarter. Like, how are we in this? How is this still a game? Because they should be killing us.
Yeah.
Like, those lineups have been so successful, and it gets you really excited about the playoffs, because as we've talked about before, if you can be successful in those non-Shea minutes, everything else is going. You're going to be in most games, like they have been, even while they've been losing.
Yeah, if you get normal Shea, and those lineups are that successful, and also if they get one more piece to add that can play with that lineup that you just like feel really solid about, I think that they're going to have a chance to make some noise.
Yeah, and I do think these last 2 games, for slightly different reasons, have shown the need for a certain type of player. Like the Lakers game, understanding why he did it, but Chet gets 2 early fouls, and Mark goes to Jang, and you kind of understand why, because they're playing Anthony Davis, they're playing LeBron James. Like, you would like to have a little bit more size out there. And Jang, to his credit, like, he had a few nice defensive plays. There was one in particular where AD was right on him, like under the basket, and he just stood up straight and forced him into a bad shot. So it wasn't like it was a complete negative, but also watching his minutes, you're like, we cannot do this in the playoffs. Like, if he is,
and it's not going to happen in the playoffs.
But at the same time, Andrew, like, what are we going to do if Chet gets in early foul trouble? We're playing a bigger team.
Yeah.
Like Mark hasn't been willing to play Giddey in these minutes.
Yeah.
I thought it was really interesting. I went back and looked at Giddey's top 10 or maybe bottom 10 minutes played games of this season. Of those bottom 10 games where he's playing the fewest minutes, he's playing under 22 minutes. 3 of them were games against Denver, and 2 of them were games against the Clippers.
Yeah.
2 of the teams that you expect, if they made it to the second round, they would be playing one of those teams.
Yeah.
He has not been willing to play Giddey big minutes against those types of teams.
Yeah.
And so seeing him go to Jang, on the one hand, you understand it. They invested a lot in him. He hasn't even played 1,000 NBA minutes yet.
Right.
I mean, you compare him to someone like Trey. Trey got to play 1,300 minutes his rookie season. He got to play 1,100 minutes last year. Jang hasn't even reached 900 minutes in his career yet.
He only played 12 minutes against the Lakers. He only played like 4 minutes last night. He's not like playing a ton.
No, he's not at all. And if you're going to try to find him minutes, this is the part of the season where it would make sense, where you're in this compacted schedule. You're going to need more guys. That part of it I totally get. But at the same time, thinking ahead to the playoffs, it would be nice to just have someone else with size coming off the bench. Yeah. Because so many of the guys that are coming off the bench that we think of as our size guys, they're actually like playing out of position on most teams. Like Kenrich, it's not like he's some huge guy. Like he can play up, but it would be nice to just have a genuinely big guy. I don't know what that person exactly looks like. I mean, you guys mentioned Al Horford. That would be someone who can come in for 10 minutes in the playoffs and you feel good about it. And then against the Clippers, what I think is so interesting about them is that they are much bigger than the Thunder, but it's not really because of their traditional big men. Like when you play the Lakers, it's like, oh my gosh, Anthony Davis and LeBron, these guys are huge.
Yeah.
With the Clippers, it's like, no, they're wings and even James Harden, they're just massive guys. Like Paul George is 6'8", Kawhi is 6'7". They all weigh over 220. Like they are so big compared to the Thunder. And that was a game last night where I'm looking at Kaysen. It's like, man, Kaysen is so small out there.
Yeah, Kaysen
like against this specific team.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think we're going to go over it. Like your top 10 list, the guys I would be moving down would be the guys like Bogdanovich, who, even though I get it, and I do think he would be like an incredible fit on this team, I just don't think what he brings as much of a priority as what some of the bigger guys would bring. Yeah. Especially now that Micic is playing well. Yeah. I mean, that kind of gets you excited, because if they found something there, because he is bringing something that not a lot of people outside of Giddey can really bring to this team, and Shea and J-Dub.
It's true.
Okay, so you have your list.
Let's go to the list. If you're on YouTube, you can see the list here live. Let's move them around a little bit. Let's see who you think should be higher or lower. I'll zoom out a little bit so we can have more candidates here. Don't want to limit you to just the top 10. Okay.
Thank you.
Thoughts on like the top 3 guys: Cam Johnson, Horford, Hayward. Those are still 3 that I think are. Cam Johnson's like less realistic, but like, and maybe Horford isn't realistic either, just because the circumstances that will lead to them getting Horford would be the Celtics finding a trade where they have to route Horford somewhere else, and the Thunder become like the third team. So maybe Hayward is actually like the only one that's like truly realistic within that group. But just like thoughts on those 3 and like their potential fit.
I mean, Cam Johnson is an easy one, because he offers you the size plus shooting, and I guess Al Horford does to some extent as well. So yeah, both of those guys I really like. Hayward, the only reason I'm like willing to go there is just because I do think the price would be relatively cheap. He is a good player. He will be good on whatever team he plays next. I don't know if it almost feels like a luxury move to have Gordon Hayward on this team right now. Yeah. But I don't think that's a bad reason to trade for him. Like, I mean, we've talked about before about how it would be nice having a little insurance off the bench, and he would be much cheaper, I think, than Bogdanovich. And so, yeah, I'd be open to that. I mentioned about Bogdanovic. Kelly Olynyk, yes, I'm still on that. Love him.
Yeah.
Don't know if they really need or would want to trade him at this point because they're playing so well.
They're so good. I just don't see it happening. I think like you can take a lot of like any of like the good Jazz players. Like you can get Taylor Horton Tucker if you want him. Then the Thunder
You
would want
can.
him.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So the Jazz have won 6 in a row. That's Thunder's next matchup. And actually, I should go back. Like Horford. Yeah, I don't totally see the argument for why Boston is trading him because that's been one of the arguments about Boston is that they're kind of thin beyond their like top 6 or 7 or whatever it is.
Right.
And so you're relying a lot more on someone like Luke Cornett in the playoffs, which I don't know if they really want to do. So I don't know if that would be super easy. I know you guys mentioned like a 3-team deal where they get Kelly Olynyk, but then that goes back to like why are the Jazz doing it?
Yeah, the Jazz that was like something like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah,
I think since, but now it's like, why would Utah do that today? They probably won't.
I mean, it's crazy how you start looking at the standings, and it's like, how far could this team legitimately go? They're now only like 2.5 games back of a locked-in playoff spot after the terrible start to the season they had.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Bruce Brown, he's in the news a little bit because there was the report yesterday that the Raptors and the Pacers might be advancing. Who knows?
Yeah.
And it seems to be a deal centered around 3 first-round picks, Bruce Brown, and then because they're giving 3 first-round picks, the Pacers trying not to give up any of like Nembhard or Mathurin. And then there was a question from some people on the Toronto side is like, once you trade for Bruce Brown, are you actually looking to move him to another team to like further boost up, the package that you got back? So maybe he would still be an option. We saw him play very well in the playoffs for a Denver team where he was kind of asked to play as a bigger player on the court. I mean, I think if you look it up, he's only 6'4" or whatever.
Yeah, he's not tall. That's for sure.
Yeah, but clearly he plays much bigger than that. So I would be open to a Bruce Brown deal. That one is also nice just because his contract is so flexible, where you could do a deal where you gave up a first and Bertans' contract and give them Trey Mann or whatever. And you really wouldn't be having to give up a ton, and you also wouldn't be setting yourself up for problems down the road.
Right.
In comparison to like trading for Pascal Siakam, where it's like, okay, now we have to give this guy $40 million a year for the next 4 years. And yes, that gets much scarier.
Yeah.
Royce O'Neal, Dario Saric, DFS. The only one here that I'm like, why even bother would be Saric. I know that he played well for the team last year, but I don't think he moves the needle in any way.
Yeah.
And that's just like a nothing trade. Like, yeah, sure. If you want to just have another body who can come in, you trust them to play 10 minutes. Sure. And I guess it would be super cheap, but at the same time, like for the Warriors, like what are you realistically willing to give up for Dario Saric? And is that really going to be worth it to them when they're going to try to be making trades that are actually improving their team? Like I would give up like a second.
Yeah, that's all I would give up too. And maybe it's like if Dario is like in a trade going out.
Yeah.
I think that is like possible,
Yeah, he's one of those guys where if he ended up on the Thunder for some reason, perfectly fine with it. Would get it.
You could play 10 minutes in the playoffs.
Sure. But also would not really change my opinion on the outlook of the team in any way.
Yeah. I mean, it's really just a veteran that knows how to play in the Thunder system is all it is.
Yeah. And then you have DFS, Deni Avdija. I like both of those guys. I think both of them could make sense. I know the concerns about Avdija, and I do think with some of these players, you just wonder, like, can you really get away with having like Deni, Giddey, and Dort in the playoffs?
Hey, shout out Dort. Dort's been awesome.
He has been. He has absolutely been awesome, but I am still going to be super worried until
Teams are starting to like close out on him some.
I mean, they should. At some point, it has to happen.
They have
And
been.
he's done it. He's done it long enough where you would kind of understand them doing that.
Yeah, he's been awesome. I mean, you hate to even just say the words out loud.
Don't do it then. That's why I like want to keep putting him in this group with like Giddey, because I don't want to acknowledge how good he's been from 3, because I know the second I do, it will vanish.
Yeah.
But yes, he's shooting 43% from 3 on 4.6.
You can't play him. You can't play, Giddey, Dort, and another non-shooter. Yeah.
The one name that I felt like you guys poo-pooed a little too much, and maybe that's just because it would be so outlandish, is Mikal Bridges. I mean, that is the type of a piece where I would be able to, or I would be willing to be a little bit more aggressive with Bridges.
Well, like, what would it cost?
I think it would cost something like Giddey, Kaysen, and 2 firsts as like a starting point.
Would you do that?
I would strongly consider it. Yes. Because I get the argument that like, well, he was the 4th guy on Phoenix, but then he went to Brooklyn and now he's used to being the 1st guy. Is he really going to be willing to kind of like slot back into that Phoenix role?
I think he will. I don't worry about that. I just worry, like, not worry, but just like, and also like, I really just don't want to trade Cason Wallace. I really just really, really, really don't. I would throw in more picks.
Oh yeah, I mean, if they were willing to do more picks, I would be happy to give them like whatever you're about to do, Giddey, Bertans, and like 4 picks.
Oos?
Sure.
I'll let him have an.
I was actually trying to think of last night teams that would be able to give Oos like the runway that he likely needs right now.
Yeah,
it's not a ton of teams, to be honest. Like
Charlotte,
maybe, but at the same time they have like PJ Washington. But yes, he could probably get like a backup role, consistent night to night. Detroit probably,
for sure. I mean, yeah, more than probably.
Well, the problem with Dieng though is that like he's been such a poor shooter. So like you have to be willing to play him and know that he's probably going to shoot like.
They play Kevin Knox.
Hey, Kevin Knox has had a pretty good season, Andrew.
I just don't want to hear it.
I mean, I don't want to hear it either. I don't want to talk about it either. But he is shooting 36% from 3.
Yeah.
So Dieng is shooting like under 30% in the G League from 3. He's shooting like 30% at the NBA level.
Yeah.
I just think it's really hard to play a guy like that right now. But there are teams who could absolutely do it. Yeah, so like something like this, Bertans, Giddey, Dieng, and however many first you need.
3.
Sure, we'll start with that. We'll start with 3.
And I would basically picks that are not the 26 Clippers pick.
Okay. Yeah, you could start with that. I think bringing Bridges, and in some ways he doesn't fix some things. It's not like he's huge, but he's big enough. But man, that starting lineup with basically just Bridges subbed in for Giddey, would be really impressive. And I also think if you read a lot of Nets fans' comments this season, their concerns with Bridges hasn't necessarily been the offensive end; it's been the drop off on the defensive end.
Yeah,
and I do think putting him back in a role, because you could play him also in those second lineups with J-Dub and Chet or Shea to give him a little bit more, usage. I just think it'll be easier for him to fall back into that defensive ace that he was for so many years. I don't think that something fundamentally has changed about Bridges where he is not as good of a defender anymore. I think you saw a similar thing with DeJounte Murray, where like he first came into the league, Zach Lowe was talking about him as like an all defense guy. I think he made all defensive second team or something in one of his first couple seasons, and he tears his ACL. He comes back, and then he starts getting increased usage. And now he still has that reputation as like a really good defensive player, but he's playing on one of the worst defensive teams in the league consistently, and it just hasn't been as good as you remember. Yeah. And I think something similar could happen with Bridges with the absence of the ACL injury, which he hasn't had, where he could come into a team like OKC, and all of a sudden that like defensive star that we saw and that we were like drooling over for so many years in Phoenix reappears. So that while that is a like maybe out there, and honestly, the Bridges trade that still makes the most sense is trading with the Rockets, because if they could somehow get their picks back in a deal with the Rockets, I think I would that would just free them up so much more than making a trade with the Thunder. And I don't know why the Rockets wouldn't want to do that trade. I mean, he seems like the perfect type of vet to bring into that team as well. Like if you could trade like Jalen Green and their picks back to them, I mean, that's a pretty juicy package.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, I could see that more than OKC, and I could see Houston doing that more than OKC. I just don't. I still like believe the Thunder want to take this team to the playoffs and see what it does. You know, maybe you would make a fringe move here or there. That's why he's so far down the list. Because like I just really doubt that they would actually.
You say that you want to see this squad go to the playoffs, but then you got Bogdanović as your number 3 guy. Now, if you brought him in, I mean, he's never played under like 27 minutes per game in his career. He's going to be expecting to play like at least 25 minutes per game. How are you making that up?
Yeah, I mean, he would come off the bench for sure.
For sure.
Like the sixth man. You know, when I say this team, I mean really the starting lineup. So I like him. I think he just fits so well with what they want to do, with the way they play offensively. That I think he'd be great just like right away.
Yeah. Oh no, he would. I mean, he would be a very good fit. I don't know. I mean, I know that we've said that like they want to see this starting lineup in the playoffs. At the same time, like Mark's substitution patterns, like the way he's playing Giddey, I can't imagine they're feeling as strong about that starting lineup as they were at the beginning of the season. So I still don't think there's going to be that type of a move where there's a change to the starting lineup. But I also I don't know if that's the reason that like they just have to see this first, because it feels like they've already kind of been going one way.
Yeah, I think there are like with Josh, there are teams and series where like he would play a lot, and then there are teams and series where he just wouldn't. You know, in the playoffs, you know, there'd be very situational teams, and I think that's okay. Like I just think that that's the level of player that he is. You know, he's not. I think that we hope that he was a kind of guy that could just play in any playoff series no matter what. And I think he'll play. I'm not saying he won't play, but I just think, you know, like Cantor, not to say like he and Cantor are necessarily like equivalent kinds of players, but you know, when Cantor was on that team in 2016, they couldn't play him at all against the Warriors, you know, but
he
played a
Spurs
role against the Spurs, you know. So I think kind of similarly of Josh, in that there's going to be series where it's like, oh my gosh, they got these 3 guys that can just all handle, get to the hoop, pass. We just can't handle it. And then there's going to be series where it's like, yeah, we're going to put Mason Plumlee on him, and it's gonna just gum everything up, and so we have to make a change. You know, that I think that's.
And also, I think there are certain teams that are going to be more willing to like aggressively target Giddey and Micic for the like as much as I love Micic, I am waiting for the playoffs when he gets in there and some team just runs actions at him every single time down the court just to see if he can handle it. And Ty Lue is absolutely the type of coach who will go to whatever extreme measure he needs to like extract some advantage.
Definitely.
And so yeah, that is a team that I don't want to see in the playoffs for several reasons. Like one is Ty Lue, because I do think he is going to find out whatever your weakness is and really hit you. I mean, we all remember the series against the Jazz when they went super small, basically took Gobert out of that, caused like a referendum on him as a player in the league.
Totally.
They will absolutely do that. And then their shot making, their level of shot making. I mean, Dort was great. And him and Giddey combined last night. Now, this was mostly Dort, but they were 5 of 10 from 3. Giddey was 1 of 3, and I think Dort was 4 of 7. On an average night, you're like, wow, what an awesome bonus to have both of those guys like or collectively shooting 50% from 3.
Right.
Against the Clippers, it's like, oh my God, they have to do this. Like if Dort has a bad shooting night, how are you possibly keeping up? Because I saw some Thunder fans saying like, what are you going to do when they're shooting like this? What they did last night isn't actually that crazy compared to what they usually do.
Yeah.
If you look at their top 4 guys in 3-point attempts, which is PG, Kawhi, Harden, and Norm Powell, they take 25 threes per game on average, and they shoot about 42% collectively.
They're number one shooting team in the league.
Last night, those 4 guys together shot 43%. Like it wasn't that crazy. And you can point to a single player. Like I think PG shot 6 of 12, so he shot 50%. Yeah, he's probably not going to do that every night. But Norm Powell's also not going to go 2 for 7. He's shooting 46% from 3 on the season.
Yeah.
So like what they did last night felt overwhelming. It felt like, oh my gosh, we're so unlucky. But at the same time, like that's what that team does. And that is why they scare me so much, because these games where OKC will shoot like 30% from 3 and still win, I don't think you can do that against the Clippers. It is just too hard. You could get away with that against like the Lakers, probably Minnesota. You can have games like that where you just don't shoot well. I feel like against the Clippers, you have to shoot well in every single game just to stay in it.
Yeah, or just Shea has to be a monster, which he's not. You know,
there's also
Shea has to go get 40, and he just wasn't capable of doing that yesterday. I mean, again,
and also a tough team for him to do that against. I mean, they can throw so many different bodies at him. That block by Kawhi at the end of the game.
Yeah.
Again, another player we were just like, oh my gosh, that looks like old Kawhi. Like that was incredible. It felt like he came out of nowhere. Like his burst on that was so quick.
Yeah.
They are super talented. And by the way, I would rather them be this talented right now. Let's get all the good vibes out of your system. Okay. Yeah. Let's have a great playoffs. Let's sign up all these guys for massive contracts for the next 4 years, and then let's see how it goes. I'm totally fine with all that.
Yeah. Lock this group in and then give us that unprotected 26 pick, maybe.
That's all.
Yeah. Anybody else on the list that is intriguing to you? Like we kind of reached like this really after 11. It's like, okay, all right, none of this is actually going to happen,
So I would bump up Okongwu and Claxton to after Bridges, and the reason is because I do think both of those guys are really good switching defenders. And I think that you can have some really fun lineups and get away with their relative lack of shooting. I know Okongwu, he's on my fantasy team. He'll occasionally hit some threes, but for the most part, you're not really expecting much from either guy from 2-point land.
Yeah, no one's guarding either of those guys.
I think that you could make it work. Those guys are good enough as passers that Mark could make it work with either of them. And I think the benefits you would get on the defensive side, they could put out just some hellish defensive lineups against some of these teams that would be so hard to score against. And I think most of the time we are focusing so much on the offensive side because it's like, what is the perfect fit around Shea and Dub and Chet? But defensively, it would be awesome to have a player like Nick Claxton or Okongwu that you could play into some of these lineups that would be just killer defensive lineups, where you can switch everything and you can just kill teams. And like Jay Will just isn't that player, like he's just not. Same with Ousmane Dieng. Mm-hmm. So I do think that is something that they don't really have that would be a nice luxury in the playoffs, just to give another look and to potentially create some like really destructive lineups.
Yeah. I just don't see either of those teams trading those guys.
Okongwu, I agree. I don't know. Really, I've seen people on Twitter talking about Okongwu. I mean, the obvious thing for the Hawks to do is to move on from Capella, and then give Okongwu the starting role. That seems to have been the plan this whole time. He's on an amazing deal. If he can be a starting center for the Hawks going forward, that would be a really good deal. So yeah, I agree. I don't know why they would trade him. Claxton, I would sort of understand just because he is coming to the end of his contract. They've been a little wishy-washy with him this season.
Yeah.
And so it wouldn't be the most shocking thing, but I also don't think they're going to give him away. Like, I don't think you're getting Nick Claxton just for, I don't know. Maybe you would get him for like 2 picks, 2 first, if they were decent first. But at the same time, like
that
I know that's the tough part. Like as much as I would like the idea of Nick Claxton, now you're going into the off season. Like you got to pay him.
You got to pay him.
Or it was just a like 4-month experiment, and yeah, that was really fun. And the question is, how cheap can you get him?
Yeah,
I do think there's a chance you could get him on like an Okongwu type deal. Which if you could do that, I probably feel pretty good. And I'm assuming they have an idea of what he would make going forward. Yeah, Okongwu's deal, does it have it on there? I can bring it up.
Yeah.
He got 4 years, 62 million. So like just over like 15.5 million.
14, 15, 16, 16.
Like that's a great deal. That's an incredible deal. And if you got Claxton on that deal, yeah, absolutely. Sign me up.
Yeah. I just don't know if you can get him on that deal.
If what?
I just don't know if you can get him on that deal.
I don't know, man. Like who do you feel like is just
I don't know.
Really wanting to get Nick Claxton?
I don't know.
Because the teams that have cap space, like it's Hornets who have Mark Williams, it's Pistons who have Jalen Duren.
I feel like we did this when we had Kanter. I was like, who's really going to pay Enes Kanter?
Well, we should have thought about the Blazers. That's our fault.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, who's going to pay him? Like, who's going to pay him that much? He's not going to make that much. He comes off the bench. He didn't play. I don't know.
It is wild that he got more back then that we are talking about right now.
I know. That's why I'm just thinking, like, because some people think of him as a top, like, 5 defensive center in the league. And if that's true, if teams believe that is true, he will get more than that.
Possibly.
I'm not necessarily one that believes that, but there are people that believe that.
So like I'm just looking at the other teams that have a lot of money. Sixers are going to have money. They have Embiid. Orlando Magic, like he could work on there, but the problem is that he doesn't shoot, and that is like the number one thing they need right now.
Yeah.
The Jazz have a lot of money. Walker Kessler, and then like the Pacers and Lakers, which that could change by that point. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I mean, yeah, he may end up getting. I mean, I expect him to get a deal, and probably with the Nets. But they have a lot of intel. They have a lot of information. If they made that trade, my first thought would be, oh, they must feel pretty confident they can get him on a solid deal this summer.
Yeah. I mean, my guess, to me, if you're going to trade for a player that's going to demand a new contract that is worth quite a bit, I think you almost have to trade Josh as a part of the deal.
Yeah. I mean,
because like the salary slot that he's going to occupy, while it's not going to be as big as we thought it was, it's not going to be small, And so to me, like if you're going to trade for a piece that's going to be one of your top 6 or 7 guys on the team, then I think you have to trade Josh as a part of it. I also just wonder about trading for a big like that. Thunder love playing Kenrich at the 5.
Well, that's another part of this. Like, Kenrich hasn't been as good this season as he has been in years past. I do not feel like he has been as impactful night to night. Now, you look at his stats, and like he's still shooting 41% from 3. He's in a little bit of a slump right now. But it just doesn't feel the same with Kenrich as in past season. Would you agree with that, or do you feel like
I don't really
Kenrich just?
No, I still think he's been impactful to them. Yeah. I don't think he's been as impactful like the last 5 games.
Yeah,
across the season, I think he has been.
I know that they like playing that lineup, but I mean, you saw it against the Lakers. Like they didn't sub him in immediately; they subbed in Ousmane Dieng, and probably because they felt like we have to get you're going to put Kenrich on Anthony Davis. Like, good luck. Like, yeah, you can try it, and maybe he'll have a couple nice plays. But
Anthony Davis, I mean,
it's Anthony Davis. But I know, but I'm saying if you have Nick Claxton, all of a sudden, like, oh, just sub in Nick Claxton. Like, there's no conversation to be had. You're not playing Ousmane Dieng. You don't have to put Kenrich on Anthony Davis. Like, it just gives you way more flexibility. And I just don't. I'm not going to reject like the ability to have flexibility. Like, why do you not want flexibility? Like, I know they like to do these things, but why not give yourself the option to do something else?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think something that would. I mean, what about Jay Will? Like, what are your thoughts on Jay Will?
Um, I think he'll probably end up being similar to Giddy, where there's some matchups where you can play him and get
Mhm.
away with it, and there's some matchups where it's just not going to work. Um, I don't know. I mean, I like Jay Will,
Yeah,
but I don't like him so much that I'm like, okay, lock him in for 15 minutes a night in the playoffs, and I'll feel good about it.
yeah,
Like I'm not there yet. I think he could play spot minutes and come in and have like a good shift, but I'm not ready to commit to him like every single night in the playoffs.
uh-huh.
And that's the thing. Like when you start talking about their big options, like you really just are talking about Kenrich, like the guy who you are confident in the playoffs night to night. You're great. You feel good about seeing Kenrich on the floor. And so I'm just saying, if I'm going to make any kind of trade, I want to trade for someone who could fill one of those backup big roles, give me another option off the bench, so that
Yeah,
I'm not going into the playoffs with just Kenrich, Usman Jang, and Jay Will.
yeah. So, according to Cleaning the Glass, last season they were a +4 with Kenrich on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
They're +11 this season with him on the floor.
How did that jump up so quick? Because only a few days ago it was
I don't know.
he was like a +7.
Plus,
Um,
that's what I'm seeing right here. +11.9 even.
wait, I'm looking at Cleaning the Glass right now. It says +4.3 in 444 minutes.
And I'm going to lineups and then with Kenrich on.
Oh, because you can also just do on-off stats. I don't know what the difference between those is.
I don't know.
Because I'm looking at like last year he was a +4.9. This year he's a +4.3. Either way, like I love Kenrich. He's been great.
He's
I
been
don't
good.
think he should be your only backup center option that you feel good about in the playoffs.
Yeah, that's my only. The only reason I bring it up is like if you trade for Nick Claxton, the idea is that he would play a lot. You know,
Not
uh,
really, dude. They're talking about They were talking about starting Day'Ron Sharp over him in Brooklyn. It's not like he's some like locked
okay,
in veteran
maybe
who's
that's
getting
true.
30
Maybe
minutes a
that's
night.
true. Maybe that's true. But like to me, the expectation if you did trade for another big is that he's not going to play a whole lot. Like he's not going to be like a night to night backup. Like he's going to play 15 to 25 minutes every night. You know, like that's just. I don't think that role is there because they do like to go to the Kenrich at the 5.
Right. And maybe that's true. And maybe that's why they don't go for someone like Claxton, because he would
Yeah,
come here, he'd play really well, but then when he got to the summer, it's like, I don't really want to do this long term.
yeah. That's why I think if you
Um,
could get, I mean, if Olynyk was available, he's like more of like the perfect kind of candidate where he's like expiring and he's
yeah,
a little bit older and he can kind of and he's more well suited to play the Thunder offense anyways.
I
Um,
agree. That's why he's higher. And I would have him higher as well.
yeah,
Guys I would have lower. Maxi Kleba, take him off the list. He's never healthy. Never, ever, ever. Never, ever. Why
I
is
do
he
like
on
the
here?
idea of him. Did you
Yeah,
hear the
sure. Everyone does. Everyone likes the idea of Maxi Kleba. He had like a really good playoffs and
he did?
year a few years ago.
Yeah.
He played 37 games last year. He's played 7
know.
games this year.
I know.
No, he's 32 years old.
That's why you could get him for cheap. And you don't
He's
even
about to
have
be
to pay.
33.
You don't have
And
to
you don't
pay.
even have to play him because he can't play.
You don't even have to play him. It's great.
He won't take up any minutes. I do like Zach Collins. I'm with Michele there. Now he claims that maybe it's just a mirage because he used to scout him. I would say no, Michele. It's real. It's real, and Wemby's holding him down, and we got to get him here. I mean, he's been good. He's been good for the Spurs.
I would like to have him as like your third center option or whatever. You know,
Yes, that would be awesome.
Because he can pass a little bit. He can do a little bit of everything.
He can rebound.
And he's got a good deal.
He's got a good deal. He's shown the ability to shoot. Last year, he shot 37% from 3. This year, he's down to 31%, but he's still taking 3.5 per game, which for a center, like, great.
Sure, whatever.
He's up to like 13-6 with 3 assists per game in 26 minutes.
Yeah,
for a center, that's pretty awesome.
He would fit really well here, I think.
So I'd move him higher
million.
up too. Only $7 million. He's on a great deal, isn't he?
What would you give up for Zach?
Well, the Spurs are kind of an interesting.
So he did get an extension. He makes 7 this year, 16 in 24, and 18 in 25.
Okay. I guess I still thought he was on that 3-year, $21 million deal. I mean, he is, but
he is.
I thought that was going forward.
He got an extension. Even 16, 18 is like not a killer. Whoops. I don't know why you can't hit back on the trade machine.
Whoops.
But okay, what would you give up to get Zachary?
Zachary.
That would be an interesting big that I think kind of fits that. I mean, you can.
It's only $7 million. Okay, so. I mean,
the cap filler stuff is like whatever. Like you can give him.
I know. Here's the real question. Andrew. Do you give them Micic? Because Micic would really help them right now.
Yeah.
And obviously
it'd
be a straight swap.
You straight trade.
Zach you could potentially really help them.
Yeah.
Basically install Micic as the starting point guard for the San Antonio Spurs. Doesn't matter what his defense is like because the Spurs are going to be bad for a little while. He would definitely help Wemby's development.
He cannot be traded this year since he signed the extension after September 18th or 20th.
Damn it! No, Zach.
He can't be traded this year. Well, you know what? Throw that in the garbage.
That was a fun little trade, though. That was. I mean, Jay would have hated that.
Yeah, Jay would have revolted.
All right.
Well, players like Zach Collins are out there. It's not like he's some.
He is a unicorn, Andrew. He's a unicorn.
He's a unicorn.
He's a unicorn. Go back to your list. Who else is on your list? Moose. Coos, Moods.
Wendell Carter, you Wendell Carter guy?
Yeah. I don't know how serious his injuries have been lately. But yeah, I mean, I do like him. I would have to imagine he could, if he's not going to be on the Magic, he could find a team that wants to give him a much bigger role than OKC could offer him.
Yeah, the Thunder can't offer him the kind of role that he would want for sure.
Yeah, the rest of these names, I don't really care. Because here's the deal. Like now we're getting into the realm of names where like you're just making a trade to make a trade. I don't think any of these names that I'm staring at right now are really going to move the needle significantly.
Isaiah Beef Stewart?
No, I will say, so I've been totally anti Clint Capella. I was listening to Ball, and they did make a pretty compelling case for Clint Capella based around. It was a compelling. It was better than any case I had heard, and it was basically just like, this is so low risk, and he's already a guy. He's going to be an expiring next year. Like, basically, who cares? He's not going to mess with your books going forward. You can play him 10 minutes per game. What's he going to do? Like, he's still getting his money. He's still going to expire next year. He can be a very specific. He can play a very specific role for you.
Yeah.
But it would be kind of nice to have that sort of a player. And then he expires next year. You could probably trade him as an expiring contract if you want, even though it sounds like a lot because he's making $20 million.
Mm-hmm.
You can get there really quick with the Bertans deal.
Yeah.
So like, even though I've been generally opposed to Clint Capella, I do think it would end up being much lower risk than I initially thought. This isn't like a Nick Claxton thing where it's like, this guy's on the come up. He's going to want a big deal, and he's also going to want a big role in his next team.
Yeah.
Like Clint Capella is, what is he? Is he 32? 31?
29.
What was that?
29.
29? I just kept making him older. He's 29, but he's going to be 30 by playoff time.
Yeah, May 17th.
I just think he's in he is just entering a different phase of his career where I forget who was talking. It might have been a John Hollinger article or someone else just talking about how Capella's taken a little bit of a drop off this year. Like his rim defense numbers aren't quite as good as they once were. And so I guess I'd be more open to that than I was a week ago, just because it is so low risk. And it's like, if you're not going to do anything else with the Bertans contract, sure. Like,
Yeah. Does
you don't have to play him.
Play though?
No. This is purely like, we're just trying to bring in someone who's a huge body, can get rebounds, to play him when we absolutely need to.
Yeah, my instinct is that they won't do that.
That would be my instinct as well. But if you put him out there with this guy Vava, run some pick and rolls with Vava, Capella run into the rim, some lobs.
Yeah,
wouldn't be terrible, Andrew.
Sure.
But yeah, I might bump him up a few spots, but I agree with you that I would be pretty surprised if that was the deal they made.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah.
So,
I mean,
there's a couple names.
After going through this list, it just makes me feel like maybe nothing will happen.
I would disagree. I would disagree. I think as we get closer to the deadline, as teams kind of get into their tiers, we'll find that there are more sellers than it feels like right now.
Yeah,
because it does feel like there just aren't any teams willing to sell outside of Atlanta, who's been talked about a lot.
Atlanta.
But like the Warriors aren't really. They're looking for upgrades. Like they're not necessarily trying to like sell off guys.
Yeah. Portland would probably sell somebody.
Yeah, maybe. Memphis, but they don't really have a lot that they would want to sell off.
Yeah, and what would you even want? Santi.
What would you even want? The Wizards are probably the biggest team. I have to imagine they're going to be trading some of these guys.
Wizards, Nets are like the two teams that I circle. That
yeah.
And then you look at the Wizards, it's like what from the Wizards do you think would actually like Denny? I think could work here.
Yeah, I think Denny could work for sure. I like Denny.
I also just think that's one of the guys that they just probably wouldn't want to trade. He's young. He's on a controllable contract. He's a big 6'9" forward that can, shoot past dribble. Like, why would that be the guy that you'd want to trade?
I think they're at the point where they need assets going forward, and they don't have as many. Like they aren't. I don't know. It'd be interesting to go back and compare where the Wizards are starting to where the Pistons started, because similar to the Pistons, what they ended up with, at least so far, like what was tradable, which was Porzingis and Beal, they just didn't get a ton back for that. Yeah. And so they don't have they don't have the future assets that OKC does. And so if you did have a player like Denny who was able to get you a couple nice future assets, maybe they'd be more willing to part with him. But yeah, he's only 23. He's younger than I thought he was.
Yeah, he's young. I just don't see that happening.
And yeah, on a good deal, really good deal. I mean, he's signed through 27, 28, and he's making 11.8 in 27, 28. What a deal.
I know.
What a deal.
It's a good deal. That's
a really good deal.
It'll be below, it'll be like below the taxpayer mid-level by that time.
Yeah.
So it's just whatever. Get Johnny Davis probably.
Yeah. I mean,
for Poku.
Somebody would have to tell me about the guard situation on the Blue, if we need a guard, because maybe we should do a trade list like this for the Blue. We'll do that next week. Everyone would be thrilled with that.
Yeah, that'd be great. We'll make a new list for the Blue.
We'd have to bring Rylan on because he's the only person I know that is closely follows the Blue.
Yeah,
he would be able to tell us what's going on.
Yeah, he'll be able to let us know. That seriously is the number one source for G League info. Something that is going to impact the Thunder in like in kind of a weird way is that this Jazz Warriors game has been postponed. That was supposed to happen tonight because one of their assistant coaches, extremely sick in the hospital after what seems like some kind of like odd food poisoning or something. Very, very strange situation. Very, very bad situation. To where they'd have to postpone the game, which is extremely rare. Like the only times I can think of like postponing games is when like a team can't get into the city. but like this is a very, very unusual situation with the league, and so it was the Jazz were going to be on the second night of a back-to-back against the Thunder, but now it will not be. So they'll be more rested going into that game, so it does impact the Thunder there. And then Amazon is going to parachute in and take over.
Just let them die, Amazon.
I know, that's kind of what I thought.
Because, like, if you read the article, it doesn't. The impression I get is not that you will just log into Prime Video and there will be the Thunder game. It'll be like, oh, another subscription that you have to pay.
Yeah, that's what it seems like.
And who knows what that's going to cost? Like, what if it's $20 a month again? And it's like,
it very well could be. It's like,
so we're back where we started.
Why are we parachuting in to do this? Like, don't do this.
Don't take this away from KSBI. Okay.
I don't think it necessarily impacts that because the Thunder's deal with them ends after this season, and so the Thunder are out of. They're done with their contract with them. After
for sure. But you wonder if they'll just re-up now with Amazon.
I don't know. I'd be a little surprised.
If you're Amazon, you're not making this deal so that teams will turn you down. Like, you're going to incentivize teams to sign up. If you're trying to create like this platform where fans can expect to watch their local teams, you need teams to show.
Yeah.
So
we'll see. There's obvious, like, the gears are in motion for a particular thing to happen with the Thunder, it seems like. Hopefully that stays the way that it is. Because, the thing is, like, people ask, like, well, what happens if you're out of market, if you're this or that? I think they're going to offer a way to watch digitally too, somehow.
Yeah.
So hopefully that will just be the route that it goes. Because I do think it'll be better locally for everybody. Like we've talked about, like it's a no-brainer to allow anybody to like casually watch a Thunder game. Not everybody's going to want to watch like Thunder Wizards or Thunder Knicks or whatever, but to casually be able to flip on, Thunder Bucks if it's not on national television, I think people would want to watch a game like that, or even the game like last night, which was technically nationally televised, but people want to watch those kind of games. And so just giving people locally that option, I think it's very important to like Thunder fandom this next go around. But we'll see.
What do you think about the potential Siakam deal?
If Indy's willing to risk it and they have some info that he would be interested in staying in Indiana, sure. I don't think it particularly moves the needle all that much for Indiana, but it makes them better, certainly. But if I'm them, I would not do this.
Yeah, he's one of those guys where I totally get the argument for like, man, you put Siakam on OKC, they're going to be so much better, which is probably true. Like, he probably make this team better in some ways.
It's definitely true.
It's just that, like, I do not want to be the team. Specifically, I don't want to be a team with like an average age of 23 who is paying his next deal, because his next deal isn't going to be a 2-year deal. It's going to be a long-term deal, and it's going to be making a lot of money. I don't think Siakam is going to settle for anything less than that. And you're also potentially going to have the Sixers sitting there with all the cap space they would need to sign him as well. So it's not like you're going to probably get him for cheap.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to pay up for him. And now you're paying for a guy who's going to be entering his 31-year-old season. So you're paying him from 31 to 34, maybe 35 years old. And I just think we've probably already seen his best season. So you're paying for a guy on the downside of his career. So he's likely going to be worse than whatever he's doing right now in a season or two.
Yeah.
And that's just not like, I understand why Indy would do it, because they've been very intentional about the way they build their team. Like, it was such a big deal when they like tanked that 1 year, when they got Mathurin. Like, they've been very deliberate about wanting to build out from the middle. And to their credit, like, obviously you go back to those PG teams, like, they were very successful. Like, they made a couple conference finals, very impressive. They now have another young all-star, 23 years old, and Halliburton. They have a system that seems to work. So, like, for them trading for Siakam, I think, makes a lot more sense, even though they are also a young team, than a team like OKC. Because OKC has been more focused on, let's accumulate these draft picks. Like, let's kick these draft picks into the future. We know that we have to stay very lean in terms of our finances because we're going to have these big deals coming up. Let's replenish our roster through these draft picks or by targeting specific role players that we can add. I think it makes a lot more sense for Indiana. I still don't know if I would be comfortable doing it. They have to have assurances that he will resign there. Because if you're giving up 3 picks, you have to know. You have to know. Please tell me they know.
Yeah.
And shout out to Siakam. That report that came out that said he's telling every single team he's not going to resign with them. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, he may want to just like go out and get wined and dined by other teams in free agency.
By Troy Weaver, who will still have a job.
Troy would give him a max. He'd get a max from Philly. I think the Philly fit would be awesome for him.
Well, and the Philly fit is super interesting because as these names start coming off the board, like OG's off the board now, Siakam's off the board now, Kawhi's off the board, PG's probably about to be off the board.
Yeah.
The entire idea of this Sixers like kind of mini rebuild after the Harden trade was that we're going to collect all this cap space and be big players next summer. Like who's going to be available? Who's left? Yeah, so they kind of have to make trades, which they can do. But you kind of wonder who it is because those were always the names. Like I thought OG would have been great there. I thought Siakam can mostly fit there. I do obviously worrying about his shooting, but yeah, I'm interested to see what they end up doing with that cap space because they're going to have a lot. They're going to pay Maxey. That'll be part of it. But who is going to be that other guy that comes in? Because you need someone who can like come in, be a third star right from the jump.
Yeah, it's true. I think Siakam could do that. I mean, he's shown in the past that he could do that. Now, it's been several years, but I still think he's a really good player. I think it's a good option for your third guy on a team like that.
For your third guy, I would feel much better. That's the other thing about OKC. It's like, what are you bringing him in as?
Yeah, that's what the tough thing is for like guys like him and marketing, where it's like, hey, come on in. You're the 4th guy on this team, even though you're maybe as good. Like maybe you're good enough to be the 2nd guy right now, but you're certainly the 3rd guy for the future.
Yeah, I mean, after you see what Dub has done over this recent stretch in those lineups where he's getting to do whatever he wants, like whatever move you make, you do not want to interfere with that growth because that is probably the biggest. If last year was like Shea's jump from being just like solid all-star to being an MVP candidate, this year it feels like the biggest story outside of Chet, which Chet probably is the biggest story, but the second biggest story would be the growth and development of Dub.
Yeah,
because the player that we're seeing now is so much more versatile than even the player we saw in the second half of last season when he was also very, very good.
Yeah.
Like this player that we're seeing now, like could theoretically run his own team if he continues to develop this way.
Yeah, without a doubt he could. Yeah. I mean, he would be easily the best player on a team like the Wizards, or I think he's better than Bellingham right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, absolutely he is.
So, I mean, it's pretty astounding to have these guys. And that's why like you want to be careful. And that's why like you want to add things on the margins that help accentuate what this team does rather than blowing, a part of it up and like figuring it out. And they're going to have to do something at some point, I think, that is on a bigger scale, but it's still so early in the process for them. You have these 3 and you want to make sure that like they're optimized, through this first part of their career so that they can grow together. And then once you hit like the overlapping primes of those 3, I mean, holy smokes. Like I think they'll be the best team in the NBA. Like I really like genuinely believe that trio will be the best trio in the NBA whenever they reach like their overlapping primes. And some people think like they are right now anyways, but I do think as you get like, I mean, this is year 1 with them as a trio, imagine what it looks like in year 3 and year 4 with them as a trio. Like it's going to be insane what they're going to be able to do. That's why you just have to be like really careful about the way that you optimize these guys.
Yeah, you definitely have to be careful, but like you said, there's going to come a point where you have to make a decision. And so if they feel like they could make that decision now and it benefits them, I don't think they'll hesitate from doing that. Like
Yeah, I
if
mean,
whatever that deal is kind of manifests itself randomly right now, even if they think, oh, we'd still like to see a little bit more, I don't think they would pass on it because
yeah,
they feel
he
so
was
confident in
aggressive.
those three.
Yeah, he was aggressive the first time around. You know, we mentioned like the date of the Tyson Chandler deal. Like he made that deal, you know, before they were ready to do
And that
anything.
is exactly the type of deal I'm talking about, where it's like so good you
Yeah,
can't pass it up. Where
yeah.
it's like we're giving up Chris Wilcox and who was the other guy?
Gosh, who
I don't
was
even
it?
remember.
Javon Harden, I think was a part of that deal. I mean, it was just like nothing. It was. I mean, you look back, it was like actually nothing that they gave up in that trade to get him. And, you know, that would have changed the course of NBA history in a lot of ways. We've talked about that a lot. But yeah,
And hey, Andrew, to your credit, one of the reasons it was Joe Smith. One of the reasons why he might have been so cheap is because of the suspected injuries. So
yeah.
maybe you're on the right path with Maxi Kleba.
Hey,
Maybe that's the Tyson. He's going to win Defensive Player of the Year in 2 years.
I don't doubt it. I don't
You
doubt it
don't
at all.
you don't even doubt it. Wow.
I don't even doubt it. I'm just
Zero
counting on
doubts.
it. Did you hear the report that his like toe just like kept popping out?
Who?
Kleba. That's why he couldn't come
What
back.
what does that mean? Like popping out of the socket?
I guess. Like his like pinky toe. Just kept like popping out of socket. Like,
Ugh,
yeah.
that's rough.
Yeah, it's brutal. It's brutal. All right. Anything else before we go?
No. After they get done with these next 2 games, which are going to be tough, Utah and Minnesota, it does finally open up a little bit. I think
Mhm.
3 of their next 4 games after that are Portland, San Antonio on ESPN, and Detroit.
Yeah.
So that'll be a night, and then they play New Orleans mixed in there. And a
Yeah.
lot of those are on the road, so it's not like the easiest schedule, but they should beat all of those teams other
Yeah.
than New Orleans, which will be a tough game.
Yeah. It lightens up quite a bit, you know, after this stretch. And they could go 0-4, you know, and it's not going to change the way that I think about this team or the outlook of the team. You know, it's just that happens to almost every NBA team. I mean, the team we watched last night, they lost 6 in a row. You know, like it's just
Yeah.
it happens, you know, and so I mean, it even if they lost to Utah and then lost to Minnesota, it would be like, all right, you know, this tough part of the schedule. They have to find a way to bounce back, but you know,
Yeah, I
they
mean, Minnesota is like a few games removed from having lost 4 of 6.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's part of it. It's part of being in the league. Thanks so much for listening to the show. If you are not listening on YouTube, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just search Down to Dunk and subscribe. You can hit the bell and you will get notifications for when we go live. Would appreciate that. If you're watching right now, which we have quite a few people watching live, go ahead and hit that like button for me, please. Make sure that you are also subscribed. Hope you guys have an awesome rest of your day. We'll talk to you guys again on Friday.